Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. A friend of mine, Pankaj Tripathi, he's a Pankaj Mishra. He's a journalist based out of Bangalore. So he says that even one is an audience. तो हम जितने लोग हैं उनके साथ हम स्टार्ट करेंगे. We'll let others join us later. We are going to talk about a topic that is, I mean, at least the people in this, I mean, the four of us, we believe is very important, and interestingly, it has not been part of the mainstream narrative when it comes to government system or the development sector ecosystem as well. Childhood and crisis. And I am Ashish, and I'll ask each one of them to introduce themselves. I think they don't need any introduction, but still. So I work with an organization called Shiksharth. We work in conflict-affected areas in Chhattisgarh, focusing on children, and we call it positive childhood experiences. And we have been working there for more than 10 years now. And as we probe further the issue of trauma because of conflict, we came across some very interesting numbers. One was that in 85 countries, there are 240 plus million children who are affected only by floods. 103 million children are affected by conflict across the globe. And in India, 24.1 million children are affected by natural disasters. We are based out of a Naxal conflict affected zone, and Naxal conflict at its peak was impacting 1/3 of the country, directly and indirectly. So the numbers are huge, and to sum it up all, it is estimated that out of 44 crore children in India, 23 crore children coexist with emergency situations because of armed conflict, natural disasters, harsh geographies, human-elephant, human-wildlife conflict. And interestingly, we don't have any policy around this. The best we have is 2 lines in disaster management policy, which says that in case of emergencies, the district education officer is supposed to open up alternative learning centers. That's the only thing that is available. And we believe that it's a topic that needs attention and should be discussed, and how can we address this issue. So I'll start with Anshu Bhaiya. And the prompt is very simple for all three of us. Is what does childhood look like in your part of work? आप जो काम कर रहे हैं, what does childhood look like? What does it mean? And then we take it forward based on whatever we come across.
Ashish, because we are talking about disaster, fine? I mean, otherwise the childhood also looks very beautiful in our part of work, because our part of work is is largely in rural India, and rural India, a child is pretty happy, right? I mean, we make all kind of assumptions that this kid does not have this kid does not have, but this kid is pretty satisfied, not exposed to the larger world, so happy. But because we're talking about conflict and disaster today, my submission is that child is completely ignored. I mean, the education is completely ignored. I mean, if you see the entire disaster response model in India, the first thing which is offered to the relief agencies to operate is the schools. Okay, that you take a school, put here all the relief material, and that becomes a distribution center for the relief material. I remember in Bihar in 2008 Kosi flood, there was a high school which was offered to us, and we operated from there, and there was this board exam, and we were very worried about it, that we should be out now because the kid will come. And people were absolutely okay to sit outside and give the board exams, which was not acceptable to us. So of course, we vacated. So couple of more things. 2008 again, Kosi flood, massive floods and all that. 2009, about 100 kids, we gave a small sheet of paper, and we said, you draw something. Now in India, typically a child, all of us must have drawn a mountain, a road, some birds. It's a very typical thing. All of us become the artists in our childhood by drawing them. almost every single kid, after an year of flood, what they were drawing was just something to do with the flood. Someone drowning, someone holding hand, someone चीखने का, कुछ something. I mean, something which they were not able to even depict, but they only wanted to do that. See what I'm trying to say? After 1 year of flood, the kind of trauma the kids were in, and we never spoke about it. I mean, you do trauma counseling for all segments of the society, but you never involve a kid in that. Recently in Manipur, all the conflicts are happening, and we're working there in the relief camps and all. Most effective work in the last few months is a truck of toys. When from Gunj, we sent it there, and you should have actually seen the happiness, the reactions, because otherwise in the last few months or more than a year now, they've only heard the voices of, the bullets, the violence, or many of them have lost their parents and siblings and all that. But it's completely ignored. It's like कि भाई बच्चा है, जी रहा है, खाना खा रहा है. But in my opinion, बच्चे की need are much more than the basic food. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Bhaiya. Kriti, I'm sure most of us know Kriti here, but just for interest, she works with the Center for Wildlife Studies, and human-elephant conflict and biodiversity has been some of their primary work of it. Kriti, please.
Hi. I think fundamentally can you hear me? No. So sorry, we're in a room with no walls, so.
You'll have to bring the mic a bit closer.
I do. It is close. Yeah. We work in really remote parts of India. It's not even rural India. I call it wild India. This is the jungles of India. So we work in the western and eastern Ghats. This is 100 wildlife parks. Children who grow up in these areas are lucky if they have teachers who come to school, are lucky if there's a chalkboard. They're lucky there's no electricity. They may or may not have running water. Girls are sent to collect non-timber forest products, may not make it back to class. Boys are sent to graze livestock. They may not make it to class. It's literally the poorest of Indians that most of us have forgotten. Their families may live on maybe 1 lakh a year, if they're lucky. And the kind of conflict they see is elephants coming and killing their family members. Elephants injuring their family members. Their fathers often sitting on machans, 9 months a year guarding crops, and no sleep most of the year. They see their livestock being killed, goats, sheep, cows. And when something like that happens, they're not able to feed their families, right? You may have to go without food. Where's the question of an education when you can't even get food on the table for these children? And yet, they live in one of the most beautiful parts of the country. They see nature in its purest form. Like you said, I think 90% of the time, things are well, and they live in very clean environments. They don't kind of see the pressure that urban children that face. And so, but when something hits, it hits really badly, right? You're not able to eat. You're not able to, you may see death and injury happen very, very often. And it's not a one-time, like a flood situation. This is a chronic problem because year after year, these families are growing up, living next to these wildlife parks. Animals are going to come onto your land and cause trouble for you. And so when we started the, what we call the Wild Charlie program, it's a conservation education program where we go to schools and use art and storytelling and game playing to, one, get kids to just fall in love with an animal. What is a tiger? What is an elephant? What is a lion-tailed macaque? You ask them, they'll know what a giraffe is because they watch TV on and National Geographic or Discovery, but they don't know Great Indian Hornbill. They don't know gaur. They don't know our wildlife, right? So get the kids excited about celebrating our wildlife Why do we have to share space and resources with these animals? And what do you do in a conflict situations? There are behavioral things you can do to keep yourself safe from a bear. What do you do when you see an elephant? When do you go for help? Don't throw stones at it. Like there's a whole set of things you can do in an immediate situation, and there are long-term things. So this is what we've focused on. We've worked in over 1,100 schools. The program and curriculum are curated in partnership with National Geographic Society. It's available in Hindi, Kannada, Tamil, Malayalam, all the South Indian languages plus English and Hindi. And it is not on the table for anybody as a priority today because these children are literally in the middle of nowhere. So our focus is to bring back inspiration, connection to nature, which we all do. I mean, most of us grow up, you want to squish a bug, you want to play when in the rain, you want to be in nature. By the time you're 7 or 8, you're addicted to devices or the TV or some textbook, and you forget that we all have this connection to nature. So our motivation is to rebuild that connection to nature.
Hi, so my name is Rahul and I'm representing AnyAid. We work primarily in Assam but also in other states as well. So I think before I start sharing about the childhood experience, I think it's important to set the context of Northeast so that we can understand in relation to that what is the experience of a child. So very quickly in less than 30 seconds, so from an economic point of view, Northeast has been isolated because of the geography. So the economic development that you will see in Northeast is slightly different from the rest of India. Then the other critical aspect that defines the childhood is the lack of connectivity. So because the development happens pretty late, so the road connectivity, the remoteness is extremely high. The other is the ethnicity, which really binds the Northeast and also defines the culture over there. However, I think what it also brings in is the conflict, the unrest in the region. For example, I'm sure you would know what's happening in Manipur, what's happening in Myanmar, and all the geopolitical tensions that is creating an unrest in the region. So there are multiple factors that is shaping the region, and that really and directly affects the childhood. So few things that I can share from my personal experience, although I have only 1.5 years of experience of being in Northeast, so it's very limited right now. But something that we have seen is 3 months in the year, in Assam primarily, all the government schools are shut because of floods. So there's discontinuity. And because there is discontinuity, everyone knows that the flood is going to come. There is no preparedness as such. The preparedness is more from a standpoint of in the sense of responding to emergency rather than education. So education always takes a back hit because health becomes the priority. Basic amenities become the priority over there. So as a child, a child is always reminded that education comes later for me. I think for me, what's more important is how can I support my family during that crisis in just gathering whatever means that is needed to survive in that situation. So flood directly impacts that. Similarly, if you go slightly, also because geographically, if you see Assam, it's divided into half by Brahmaputra. So it plays a very critical role in shaping what's happening this side of the river and what's happening that side of the river. So again, and at certain points, you will see childhood experienced with lesser conflict or lesser adversity or lesser extent of abruption in the education, but in the other parts it's quite severe. The other domain that is that impacts the child is the ethnicity. So for example, if I talk about Assam primarily, there's a lot of migration that has happened from Bangladesh in the last few years. So there is a lot of unrest that has happened. So I don't know how many of you are aware of the Bodo movement that happened. So they wanted to ensure that they have a separate land. And again, so there's a hostility between the ethnic groups, between different groups. So they see that, they experience it in the news, in the way the teachers respond to, you know, how when they are in the classroom. So it's pretty evident, it's pretty alive, and that also affects their overall dignity, overall belief in the education, belief in the continuity of education. But yes, as I think Anshul and ma'am already said, that there are parts where children are enjoying, they're away from the economic development hustle and bustle, so they are enjoying with nature, they are enjoying their peers, and, you know, all the interaction that nature offers. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Rahul. I'll quickly share two stories that we often share. So back there, we have set up an experience zone of education in childhood in crisis, and this one activity that we asked anybody who was visiting that zone was to draw anything that comes to your mind, and we have those small sheets where people mostly have drawn a beautiful scenery. Some cartoons as well. Somebody has drawn RCB is my favorite team. So in Sukma in 2015, we were in a grade 4 classroom, and 53 students. We asked children to sketch anything that comes to your mind, sketch at will. And out of 53 students, 47 students had sketched a combat scene between security forces and the Naxals, or the Naxals killing the communities, or the security forces, mostly the security forces killing the community members. So, I mean, I have a 6-year-old son. I get uncomfortable when he plays with gun, and somebody recently gifted him a gun, and he's like, "Abhi tumko maar dunga." So I mean, 47 children sketching a combat scene, only 6 children sketching their gaon ka mela, a village fair, is a difficult scenario. And whenever we have asked children to do something with leaves, with stones, mostly they have created AK-47. So that's a concern. We last year in one of the Anganwadi centers in Sukma, children were playing with empty shells that were fired through rocket launchers during combat. So वो ज़मीन में कहीं दबे हुए थे, somehow during play they found it out and they were playing with those empty shells. So this is a glimpse of a childhood. I mean, every kilometer, every 2 kilometers, there's a security camp. Now, I mean, if there are any parents in this group right now, we won't be comfortable with our children walking by a police station or walking to a police station on a daily basis. पर आप हर 2 किलोमीटर के बाद एक पुलिस स्टेशन, एक कैंप से इंक्वायरी करके फिर आप गुजर रहे हो. The conversations that adults are having with the children. So ये कुछ glimpses है. We will have just 2 more round of questions, and then we want to have a collective discussion around this. So in सभी situations पे one common thing is our government system, या I would say, I mean, in general civil society, government system has not been successful in providing adequate support, and to begin with, just reaching out. In cases mein, how does community ensure that the child is having that thriving childhood that they should? I mean, I've seen in Sukma festivities, so we use this phrase called Utsav Dharmita. Utsav Dharmita is celebrating life as a festival. So anything that happens in the village, agar wo serious discussion bhi hoga, it will end with a dance. So how we can call that a resilience, but they have a way of celebrating life and ensuring the next generation is taking forward those values of celebrating life as it is. So, I mean, what have you seen in your work? Yeah.
Ashish, absolutely, very partially agree with you in this. You know, I mean, they have found some ways for sure, but without understanding the gravity of the impact of all this. Because this is I mean, we were just talking and I was just telling her that, you know, I always say this, that one of the biggest curse, not only in India, in many other communities, is too much of resilience. Yeah. Okay? Resilience by force. You think that people are very resilient, but that's fundamentally wrong. Why should we be so resilient that we are absolutely, because that resilience also brings a lot of acceptance of all kind of nonsense, which should not happen to us, right? So because the benchmarking has become so low, even for the parents to survive in that area, also because there's a compulsion to survive in that area, you end up, enjoying festivals. But that does not bring out all kind of traumas and everything from the child. Otherwise, that those 47 kids wouldn't have, sketched that. That these 100 kids in Bihar wouldn't have done that after a year. So, I think the most important part for us as this bigger community, because we should not consider that just a small community. If we are there, we are also a part of that community. I mean, that's what unfortunately happens, us and them kind of stuff, is that how do we create more and more spaces just to, I say, play, talk, read. Because बच्चे की भाषा खेल है ना. It's how do you make sure that that kid is actually out of that trauma of any disaster, whether it's a bomb, it's a murder, it's a fire, it's a flood. How do you make sure that that kid is no more a part of those debris and there in the safe space, away from that, physically away from that, to most of it. That is what we need to work with the communities. The fact remains that most of those communities are not able to do it themselves, so that kid also become a part of the daily routine. I mean, we work a lot in conflict zone, from say Kashmir to, either directly or people, or, the warriors like you, we work. And we know that what a simple toy can do, so my last argument is that the first thing which we all need to ensure, which the local communities often don't, is that how do we bring back whatever schooling system, education system, Anganwadi is there, how do we make sure that that starts operating from the day one? Because there's at least some space where you're out of your daily dilemma for 5-6 hours and you look up to your friends. You come to a better ecosystem. And that is what we need to do as community, as an extended community, and that particular community which is suffering in the disasters.
So I think with us, we've started with just joy. How do you bring joy back into the classroom? And it is through art, it is through storytelling, it is through games. And can you block the trauma out momentarily, right? And I think that has been the focus of what we've tried to do. It is not about literacy, it's not about numeracy, it's not about educational milestones. There are no exams at the end of this, right? But we make it fun, we make the kids want to come to school, and inherently you walk into a lot of these classrooms and the kids are just kind of drilled to stand up, say good morning, and sit down. And initially we were shocked because we would give them art paper and everybody would draw a goat being killed by a tiger or like something really unimaginative. And then we started to give a simple mask of you want to be a frog, you want to be a butterfly, you want to be a bear, and color it up. And you don't have to color a tiger as orange and black. You can make it whatever the color you want, right? And the kinds of amazing creative things the kids started to do, right? Play board games. We actually designed an elephant board game on what happens if you're an elephant and you have to move through villages, into crop fields, into the forest. And they started to realize, why are elephants coming and eating my crops? Because they need to eat 200 kilograms of food daily. It's much easier to come out and eat sugarcane than to go in the forest and start foraging for food, right? So they start to make these fundamental connections. We've seen entire classrooms, like the first session, they'll just sit there quiet, and our educators are getting frustrated, saying, are we even connecting with these children? Are we making any kind of impact? By the time we leave, it is, they've brought seeds and feathers and sticks as presents for our educators, right? Even in really remote tribal areas where maybe we had to teach in Hindi or Marathi because we didn't know that local tribal language, and you think you're not reaching the child. But then by the end, on the last day, when they know we've done our 9-10 sessions, they connect to the educator. And you've left something behind where the child will start to be a steward of their forest, their village, their animal, as opposed to seeing this as something separate from me. So.
Yeah, quite interesting. I think in Northeast, the community has always taken education as their responsibility. If you look at historically, in 1980s, 1990s, till then, the communities were the ones who actually created the schools. Different people donated. Some people donated their land. Some people said, we'll provide bamboo. Some provided something or the other. So community has always been extremely engaged in a child's education. So the child always feel that there is an ecosystem around me when crisis will happen or when something emergency will happen. So that orientation exists in the Northeast. I'm talking about it in the context where we work primarily. Something that we have seen community doing really well. So for example, floods is a major part in Assam especially. What we have seen people doing really well is while we work with them, we realize that even they want their children to continue their learning. And the role that we play is just facilitating that dialogue, that discussion, that how we can do that. And community has the wisdom because they have seen floods historically, so they know how to be ready, what to do in those circumstances. So one of the things that has worked for us is creating mobile schools through bamboos. So the community overall, just come together, mobilize different resources. They ensure that there's a an alternate space where children can come. Now the safety becomes a critical issue for the parents because they want the children to access those spaces while they're walking and going there. So there are community volunteers that come in play in such situations. So I think something that we have realized is how can we create an ecosystem. I think what he was also mentioning earlier, how can a child experience a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a sense of ecosystem when the child is going through something which they are unable to or they don't have the agency to act. So what role can others play? I think we have seen communities responding in a very mature way, and we the only way we do it, what we do is just have a dialogue with them, and that has really worked for us.
Thanks. एक trivia है बहुत interesting. As Kriti was talking about elephants eating sugarcane. So Chhattisgarh organization I met recently told me that paddy is for elephants. Paddy is what biryani is for most of Indians. So if you are growing paddy and if you have disrupted their path, because they don't. It was very interesting that elephants pass on their travel path to their offsprings. That's how that happens. It's generational memory. And उसमें अगर आप बीच में खेत डालोगे, building बनाओगे, तो वो paddy आएगा, भूख लगेगी. It's biryani for them. And that is in Chhattisgarh. That is one important reason Chhattisgarh and Odisha, because it's a paddy major. The major agricultural crop is paddy, so it's biryani. So my last thoughts for all of you is. So when we were curating this session, the topic that was suggested to us was restoring education, and I said कि education के beyond थोड़ा देखते हैं. Childhood is much beyond just learning outcomes, and there's a theory that says that every human being takes their decisions based on three subconscious questions. Am I loved? Am I safe? Am I growing? ये हमारे करियर डिसीजन, शादी करनी है नहीं करनी है, जॉब स्विच करना है, कहाँ जाना है, ये 3 सवालों पे बेस्ड होते हैं. और at Shikshat we have been trying to define what these 3 questions mean, and education is an important tool, but still there's a lot more to that, and that's why we call it childhood and not education. So what will be your suggestion? This is a group of all educational organizations, और हम सब education की बात कर रहे हैं. We do conferences, but the children are missing. We do podcasts, but the children are missing. We design models, but in our theory of change, the child at the center is missing. So what should be in general? I would say, not what belief system and what values should we bring in as civil society organizations, what should government do, so that ये narrative आ सके. I mean, नक्सल conflict में government हर साल data दे देती है कि इतने लोग मर गए. अभी जो मर गए, unfortunately they died, but जो जिंदा हैं उनकी life कोई बहुत अच्छी नहीं है. And somehow we are waiting for people to die to say कि ठीक है we failed. So what could we do? Yeah.
So education, formal education is just one part of it. I mean, that's what we need to understand first as the organization. वो हम लोग बहुत बार we talk about it in the disaster and village work कि भाई पहले तो very most important part is the survival. Then you talk about sustenance and and the growth. तो वो भी एक path है. This is a path. But what I have seen in my journeys, in especially looking at many institutions who are trying to work, because some funding is happening from somewhere, तो आपको वो सब एजुकेशन आउटकम चाहिए, कितने बच्चों को पढ़ा लिया, कितने बच्चे स्कूल में चले गए, और शायद इसीलिए सत्यानाश है हमारा इन दी एंटायर एजुकेशन सिस्टम. मतलब आई हैव बीन सेइंग दिस कि इफ़ यू there might be some difference of opinion in this, which is absolutely perfect. That if you, in many states, if you have this theory कि 8th तक कोई एग्ज़ाम नहीं होगा, suppose, है ना, वो एग्ज़ाम कैसा होगा we can decide. But if there is no examination, that means you are actually 8th pass born. आप 8वीं पास तो पैदा ही हो गए फिर. There is no examination. If you have any school in your vicinity, तो फिर तो आप 8th grade पास पैदा हुए हो इस देश में, और 7th grade और 6th grade. So how will things improve? किस चीज पर आप एग्जामिन करोगे, दैट इज द पॉइंट ऑफ डिस्कशन. बट एग्जाम ही नहीं करोगे, ऐसा कैसे होगा? दैट वे, आई मीन दैट्स हाउ आई फील. तो मुझे लगता है कि और आशीष, इसमें I'll add another thing just to give you a perspective. When we are talking about disasters, okay, if you see the urban education system also today, the only thing in the name of disaster which we are teaching the kids कि if there is an earthquake, टेबल के नीचे चले जाओ, go under the table. We are still teaching that. टेबल प्लास्टिक की हो गई हैं और डिजास्टर्स इवॉल्व हो गए हैं. We were never talking about this Naxalite conflict or and all these things as disasters in our life. Right? हम हमेशा वो नेचुरल डिजास्टर को डिजास्टर मानते थे, ह्यूमन मेड डिजास्टर को we were never considering, or we are not talking much about. So disasters have evolved. Tables have become plastic. We are still telling the kids कि तुम टेबल के नीचे चले जाओ. Why I am touching this issue? Because ये जिन स्कूलों में ये जो बच्चे पढ़ रहे हैं, जिनको हम बता रहे हैं कि तुम टेबल के नीचे चले जाओ, they are the decision makers in this country. सुकमा के बच्चे, next generation will become decision maker. फर्स्ट जनरेशन स्टिल हैज टू स्ट्रगल आउट, जो जिन पे सब बच्चे काम कर रहे हैं. और ये जो अर्बन में बच्चे बैठे हैं, जो जिनको टेबल के नीचे जाना है, दे आर द डिसीजन मेकर आफ्टर 10 years or 15 years. That is what needs to happen. So a lot of cultural shift needs to happen at the end, जहाँ पर decision makers बैठे हुए हैं. Because if those decision makers are educated well, they will not push people to give learning outcomes immediately. They will not push people after a disaster to see कि कितने बच्चे स्कूल वापस गए कि नहीं गए, or let's paint a school, so that the school looks nice. मतलब मैं तो बहुत बार CSR में there are good friends and I always talk to them कि यार जब तुमको तुम्हारा काम सॉफ्टवेयर बनाना है तो तुम सॉफ्टवेयर बनाओ. You don't know how to paint, so why do you want to kill the रोजगार of someone who paints? वो फंडामेंटल शिफ्ट मुझे हमेशा लगता है कि हमें यहाँ चाहिए. विद दिस कम्युनिटी वी नीड दोज फंडामेंटल शिफ्ट एंड मोर अंडरस्टैंडिंग एंड लर्निंग ऑफ इट, इंस्टेड ऑफ एक्चुअली एक्सपेक्टिंग ए लॉट एट दैट एंड. बिकॉज जो आपने कहा ना कि वो कम्युनिटी रिस्पॉन्ड करती है, कम्युनिटी को एक छोटा सा ट्रिगर पॉइंट चाहिए होता है, एंड दे डू नॉट रिस्पॉन्ड ओनली इन द वे वॉट यू वॉन्ट. They also add their wisdom and love and all those three things what Ashish was talking about.
for us, I mean, education is not the main thing we do. We are an organization that's existed in India for 41 years with a mission to save India's wildlife and wild places. As part of that journey, we realized there are communities affected by wildlife and that children are affected directly by wildlife. So we are not part, this is not where we, CWS, usually hangs out, right? We are here because I think the common thread is, whether you like it or not, schools are an anchor. They're a safety space for many children in all kinds of contexts. Usually, I think, some children hate to go to school, some children love to go to school, and most are somewhere in the middle. And if you can create that safe space during a disaster, not take it over, but create the space. Create that space where a child feels like they can go and share whatever they've undergone, right? In our case, it's somebody getting killed, somebody getting injured, not sure if they will be able to eat for the next 6 months. These are fundamental life challenges, right? And for us, long term, if we want to protect wildlife, people growing up around wildlife are the stewards of these places. Beyond resilience, that's too high a goal. I think some empathy and some tolerance, and India's wildlife will survive. India's children will be connected to our wildlife. And I think it's much, much simpler. And I think what we share as a civil society organization, which I think with many others sitting here today, is that such a complex and diverse country, each of us think we have a solution that will go pan-India. It won't, right? And we put too much pressure on ourselves to be, this is our organization and we're doing this and somebody else is doing this. I think we can be kinder to ourselves, step back and start to look at interesting collaborations. CWS would be happy to work with all of the education NGOs, because I think some of the things we've learned, we would be happy to just share and have you inculcate it in how you do education across the country. Whether you want to save wildlife or not is fine, but we do, and we've learned things on how do you communicate the value of nature to children, and very happy to collaborate and partner with anybody sitting here today. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to come to an education conference.
Thank you. I think for us, you were asking what values and beliefs we should be holding, right?
The mindset shift.
The mindset shift.
What should we do?
Yeah. I think two things that has worked for us, whether that's a mindset shift needed or not, that's debatable. But something that has worked for us is one, believing in the community wisdom, because as I was mentioning earlier also, the community knows how to respond. They have the wisdom historically to navigate through conflicting situations. The second one is the wisdom in the government. We personally believe as an organization that we want to supplement or complement the system complement the system rather than supplementing it. So in the moments of crisis, we have seen government also responding with very fierce action that is needed to support people. However, they also need some people on the field to really mobilize things very quickly. For example, if I have to just give an example, when floods happen, usually, let's say a particular district there is a case that has happened. For a government to take action and provide the relief, it takes approximately 20 to 21 days. That's a turnaround time for them. But they need people like us in the field who can reduce that turnaround time. So now, through our community volunteers, through our local people, we collaborate with the system. We ask them, we have a dialogue with them. We bring in external CSRs and partners who believe in, providing very immediate support. So I think we have seen that this has really significantly helped people, children, community members receiving the support that they need, that too with the pace which is needed during that crisis situation. So I think, yes, to sum up, believing in the community wisdom and also believing in what the government wants to do and how they want to do it, and just identifying ways in which we can play that facilitator role even for them so that they can do their job really effectively.
Thank you. So in terms of in times of crisis, it is said that women obviously are the most vulnerable, but children are as well, and because they don't have a say in how they are feeling. So I mean, everybody else is taking that decision for me. In last 20 years of my work in education, the best suggestions have always come from non-education sector people. So ये by design था, we didn't want to bring in एजुकेशन प्रोफेशनल्स बिकॉज मुझे पता है कि अगर हम लेके आते तो हम घूम फिर के लर्निंग आउटकम्स और NEP पे अटक जाते एंड द आइडिया इज टू नॉट गो इन टू दैट डायरेक्शन. हाँ, तो इसीलिए तो वो ज़्यादा अच्छा है, फिर हम उसमें बात नहीं कर रहे हैं. या फिर हम एट मैक्स इफ वी वुड हैव ब्रॉट इन ओनली एजुकेशन सेक्टर प्रोफेशनल, द मैक्सिमम वी वुड हैव गॉन टू वुड हैव बीन सोशो इमोशनल वेलबींग ऑफ द चाइल्ड. But it's much more beyond this. So I mean, I mean, I love what both of you shared. And if I have to just combine this with an example that we are seeing, मतलब आपने man-made disasters बोला और बहुत interesting है. तो हिमाचल प्रदेश में cloud burst होता है, landslide होता है, 150 schools are shut down. We don't know when they are going to reopen. या वायनाड में schools destroy हुए. सुकमा में because of man-made disaster, 300 schools were blasted for 15 years. So एक पूरा area which is larger than many European countries didn't have schools from 2008 to 2005 to 2018-19 तक. So I mean we don't see that as a man-made disaster. It's a very isolated incident that is happening, but then end of day it's a disaster. And the current generation in Sukma, there's a very interesting issue that is being raised in tribal communities in central India. So there's this rule called sixth schedule where a non-tribal cannot buy a tribal land. So now the community members जिन्होंने थोड़ा सा पैसे ऐसे कमा लिए, सरकारी नौकरी मिल गई, they are doing reasonably good. They are saying कि हम पे ये rule मत apply करो. We want to sell our land. If I sell my land as per the rule, I will hardly get 45,000 rupees or 50,000 rupees for an acre of land. लेकिन non-tribal land अगर मैं बेचता हूँ तो I'll get 1 crore plus. So there is a sudden aspiration in the new generation, which is, and that's a forced aspiration because we have very systematically manipulated them to believe that जंगल काट के अगर शॉपिंग मॉल बनाएंगे तो डेवलपमेंट है. So the importance of connecting children to their wildlife, I mean, is something that is very, very important because that sense of pride. I mean, when we go in the villages, और हम कई बार ऐसे गांव के जो यंग लड़के लड़कियां उनसे पूछते हैं क्या करते हो, तो बोलते हैं कुछ नहीं करते. और ये कई बार हुआ कुछ नहीं करते, तो हम बोलते ठीक है फिर हम आपको 5,000 रुपये देंगे, 2 घंटे स्कूल में पढ़ा लो. बोलते नहीं टाइम नहीं है. टाइम नहीं है तो क्यों नहीं है टाइम? क्योंकि महुआ का सीज़न आया, फिर इमली का सीज़न आया, फिर तेंदुपत्ता का सीज़न आया, फिर पैडी का सीज़न आया, टाइम नहीं है. सो उन्होंने ये पूरा अपना जो साल भर का फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस बेस्ड इकोनॉमी थी उसको कुछ नहीं में कन्वर्ट कर दिया. And so these are all the repercussions of how the whole ecosystem has evolved. We'll now open it for anybody to reflect, share, ask any questions. And thank you so much. That's the beauty of not inviting the same domain people. Yeah.
Thank you for all the insights, first of all. I think my question is very much in lines with what Ashish just ended the conversation with about what does development look like in conflict regions, and in any insights from you all as to how does the community look at development? What does it mean to them? Any examples you've heard from?
Actually, I don't think it's we think very linearly about development, right? And in a lot of these places, if they have electricity, they have water, and they can charge their cell phone and watch the same TikTok and Instagram videos, they don't want to move to cities. I think we make a very false assumption that everybody wants to move to a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 city. I'm seeing a lot of people realize that where they live, if they can get certain basic comfort, they're quite happy, right? So I think the definition of development is changing very rapidly. And if those fundamental services which you assume cities give better than villages are taken care of, people won't aspire to this this version of development, right? So.
I think it's not uniform. Uh, it also depends disaster to disaster, what kind of disasters you're dealing with. It also depends, like he's talking about Assam floods or Bihar floods or many of these floods, where people know that it will happen. I mean, I remember going to Morigaon, traveling in Assam, and how before sleeping, people put all their utensils and clothes, they tie in a sari or chunni and hang it from the roof and then sleep. Because they know that any day the water can come. How much it will come, they don't know. But they're at least prepared with a potli of something. And that's a routine for them. So, I mean, now they do not want to go out for sure, okay, because that's their land. Lot of people, there's huge argument, in this disaster response work with a lot of people in the cities who always debate on this, that why these people are not leaving their space. Right? You shift to US and you don't even sell your own DDA flat in Delhi. You maintain that, lock it, it goes waste forever. You remain there, you take the citizenship also there. But you want the rural population to shift because there's a disaster. And it's not just home, it's a land, it's belonging, it's your culture, it's your relations, it's your memories there. So every community responds in a different way. I will come back to my same point that lower benchmarking, acceptance of many things which should not be accepted, and it has resulted into very low response also. Because at the end of the day, the way the dynamics work, we give 5 kg rice to someone and call that person a beneficiary who has been supplying rice forever to us. You see? That is a problem. That way. And communities also know, as Kriti said, that not everyone wants to move out. COVID is one of the biggest proof of that everyone wanted to go back to the root because that is the sense of belonging. Right? I mean, the curse in the world is the forced migration. Right? Cities are not pulling people. It is the villages which are pushing people because we are not taking care of the villages. And that's where all these major conflict or the impact of disasters happen. I mean, if Bangalore is flooded, we are still able to come back to the normal. But when the villages are affected in a big way with all these disasters, the forced migration happen. If Bangalore is flooded, many times it happens now, we don't migrate. We come up, we come back. But if in the villages it happens, they have no option but to migrate. And then some people end up staying here in all kind of miseries.
I think I just want to add one small point. From my personal experience, I think it's very contextual. So, for example, in Manipur, the development may seem like law and order situation being enforced. There's basic continuity of life in general. Children are going to school, so that would mean development for them. But maybe for Assam, they are more aspirational. People do want I know it's a sad truth, but most of the people who are educated, they want to move to the mainland, the so-called mainland, because they have aspirations, they want to grow. So again, it depends from people to people, region to region. And I think there are two things here. Again, one is the actual need. What do they really need? And is there a support for that? And there's a perceived need, which politicians and different people just throw to them that this is what development means in your region. So that those narratives do exist. So even they fall into the prey that, maybe for us that is, that person, what that person is saying, maybe that is the development for us. So it's very, complex in nature, according to me, from my personal experience.
I don't have a fully formed question, but I wanted to know your thoughts and insights on parenting and raising children in these conflict zones. And since all of you all have touched upon, wisdom, community wisdom, anything that stands out in your experience as, what are practices and norms which allow for enable possible joyful childhoods despite these kind of conflicts that are happening?
I think, I mean, I can't define any one practice, but this whole phrase that I use, उत्सव धर्मिता, अब वो भी है कि resilience by force भी है. मतलब when that JE virus happened, Japanese encephalitis, so Sukma के border में Malkangiri district है, which is southernmost district of Odisha, 100 newborn children were dead. Government data was 30. Now we went to the villages for fogging. We volunteered to do fogging in the villages, and the people were saying कि वो देवी माँ नाराज हो गई होगी इसलिए इतने बच्चे मर गए. So अब वो resilience by force है. मतलब मुझे लगता है कि, और हम कल यहीं पे डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि इन्फ्लुएंशियल लोगों ने समाज में ये बोल दिया कि आपके साथ जो हो रहा है, एक तो वो नैरेटिव जो होता है अच्छे के लिए होता है तो आप झेलते जाओ. फिर उन्होंने बोला कि ऊपर वाला तय कर रहा है, तो फिर वो कर्मा का कॉन्सेप्ट भी आया. तो वो सारे कॉन्सेप्ट हमारे लिए आ गए, कम्युनिटीज़ के लिए आ गए, उधर नहीं है. But then way of life is something. In tribal communities, I think life and death both is seen in a very dignified way. So वो एक aspect आता है. So बच्चों को what the community does is and try to ensure that they are rooted in their practices and wisdom. इनफैक्ट हमने एक फर्स्ट ऑफ इट्स काइंड सर्वे हमने चालू किया था 3 साल पहले, फंडिंग नहीं मिली तो अभी पॉज पे है, लेकिन वी वर डूइंग दिस सर्वे, डूइंग फोकस ग्रुप डिस्कशंस विद पेरेंट्स इन देयर ओन लैंग्वेज, व्हाट डज एजुकेशन मीन टू यू. एंड द फर्स्ट थिंग एवरीबडी सेड, 2 थिंग्स दे सेड कि हमसे पहले किसी ने पूछा ही नहीं कि शिक्षा में हमको क्या चाहिए, आप पहले हो. दूसरा उन्होंने बोला कि जो ज़्यादा पढ़ लेता है वो बदतमीज़ हो जाता है. So because they see that the child is getting alienated from their cultural practices, and so the communities have that practice of ensuring the child is connected to the roots, and mostly and connected the root festivals, celebrations are a great one. मतलब जिस दिन आम गिरता है गांव का पहला, उस दिन वो पूरा गांव इकट्ठा होकर उस आम के पेड़ की पूजा करते हैं, and that's when you start consuming mangoes. So they have those practices and that's their way. बाकी again, interconnectedness with nature is something that keeps a lot of, and अभी तो साइंटिस्ट भी बोलते हैं कि वो it's a therapy. अभी तो आजकल वो मैंने बैंगलोर में देखा है, hug a tree का थेरेपी आ रहा है आजकल. Go to some outskirts और आप पेड़ से गले मिलो and you'll feel nice. So वहाँ पे वो routine practice है. So that's their way of being happy. Yeah.
What we have seen, and maybe Ashish should also say, जो human made conflict है, especially all these riots and all that, उसमें बहुत complicated है because the parents are also going through a very tough phase, So to save their kids from say any kind of hatred or anything is very complicated. There's a huge burden on them कि भाई ये कैसे ना हो ऐसा. जैसे माना कश्मीर में पिछले 20-25 साल में जो भी बच्चे बड़े हुए हैं वो तो बहुत कॉन्फ्लिक्ट के साथ हुए हैं, and the only stories they have are the stories of all kind of wrong things, whatever they've heard or whatever they've seen. So it's very conflictive. It's very complicated for them. मुझे लगता है बहुत ही वाइज फैमिलीज होंगी जो इन सब चीज़ों से ऊपर उठ गई होंगी और फिर भी बच्चों को कुछ अलग बता पा रही होंगी.
Yeah, so we say this कि एक बच्चे ने अगर empathy, compassion and quality education access नहीं किया तो you can't expect that child to grow as a constructively engaged adult. और वो फैक्टर है जहाँ पे पॉसिबिलिटीज़ हैं. हाउ कम्युनिटीज़ हैव डेल्ट विद इज, जैसे झारखंड, उड़ीसा, छत्तीसगढ़ रेसिडेंशियल स्कूल्स बहुत हैं. सो उनके लिए वो एक सेफ्टी नेट भी है. उनको लगता है कि ये जो गांव में जो भी कुछ चल रहा है, सुबह एंटायर उड़ीसा एंड छत्तीसगढ़ सुबह सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस आ रही हैं, रात को नक्सल मिलिशिया आ रहा है कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में, सो वो अपने बच्चों को बाहर भेज देते हैं रेसिडेंशियल स्कूल्स में, विच इज़ अगेन अ डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ ट्रॉमा ऑल टुगेदर. 6 साल का बच्चा अपने कपड़े खुद धो रहा है, बर्तन खुद धो रहा है, वो भी अपने आप में एक ट्रॉमा ही है. तो वो एक एस्पेक्ट है, लेकिन इट्स वेरी वेरी कॉम्प्लेक्स. और मेरे को नहीं लगता उसका कोई आंसर. आई थिंक, आई मीन ऑल आई हैव सीन, आई मीन वी हैड अ साइकोलॉजिस्ट कमिंग फ्रॉम बॉम्बे एंड दैट पर्सन लेफ्ट इन 5 days सेइंग कि मुझे तो यहाँ सब लोग न्यूज़ में पढ़ा था कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है, यहाँ तो ट्रॉमा नहीं दिखाई दिया. बट आई वाज लाइक आप क्या एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे थे, आप आओगे तो रोते बिलखते लोग मिलेंगे आपको, नहीं मिलेंगे. आई मीन इट्स लाइक सिटीज़ में वी डोंट नो हाउ मेनी विमेन दैट वी आर कमिंग अक्रॉस आर विक्टिम्स ऑफ डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस. वो हंस रही हैं, वो तैयार हो रही हैं, वो ऑफिस आ रही हैं, वो घर का काम कर रही हैं. सो जो को एग्जिस्टेंस विद जो ट्रॉमा है, इट आई मीन वेरी एक्सप्लिसिटली उसको डील करना कैसे करते हैं, आई मीन इवन वी डोंट हैव दैट आंसर.
Hi, can you hear me? So I am from Chhattisgarh. This conversation felt very personal to me. घर से भागना था. No, but this conversation felt very personal to me. I grew up thinking about trauma, conflict in a very linear fashion. But I think hearing from all of you has helped expand that. So thank you. I was originally going to ask you something else, but based on what you just said like 5 minutes back, I think one of the things that conflict and trauma does to anybody, child, adult, is it takes away your sense of control. It takes away your sense of dignity also, and to the point where you normalize it. Given that you all work in these areas, how do you solve for that? It doesn't have to, you don't have to respond from the lens of a child. You can respond from any lens that you want. But how do you solve for restoring dignity? Additionally, for you specifically, it's very easy for a child to hate the elephant, right? But because hate is an emotion that's everywhere, right? Look at the world right now. You hate on hate so easily. So how do you make sure that the child doesn't hate the flood or the elephant or the Naxal coming in the night? Yeah, that's the question.
So, couple of things. One is for the, and I don't do this us and them, but because we're talking about it, and I need to point out about us. That's why I'm calling it us. It's an important work on the language and lenses on all of us. I mean, I tell you, I was a student. I was doing my journalism when this massive earthquake happened in Uttarakhand, Uttarkashi, and that was my first ever exposure to a village. I had never seen villages before that. I had never seen disasters. And what I saw, and maybe that's how, that was one of the seed for Goonj somehow. What I saw that in the trucks, whole lot of clothes and shoes and everything is coming. Absolutely unsorted, whatever. And then we used to throw it on the people. Because we were supporting, we were giving relief, and they were disaster victims. You see the word victim. And I was a kid. I was just a 20 years old boy roaming around with a small camera, first time exposure to the village. Morning when you are there were only 2 discussions. One, रात को कितने झटके आए, because tremors आते थे. And second, how miserable and sad the people felt by getting those clothes. Unwashed, dirty undergarments, thrown on you. पहाड़ी माथा, मतलब गांव का माथा सबसे ऊंचा होता है ना. गांव का लोग कभी आता नहीं है ना. No villager come to you asking for something. Village is constantly giving it to us at the cost of their own food, welfare, whatever. They are their constant giver. और हम लोग जब भी किसी भी support के लिए जाते हैं after every disaster, where economic poverty itself is a disaster, but otherwise if you know for a known disaster, we are not at all careful about that entire scenario, that the dignity of people, right? The self-respect of the people, that the fact that they give us, they make our houses, they make our roads, right? मतलब एक बार जरा प्याज महंगी होती है तो सरकारें बदल जाती हैं हमारे यहाँ. So imagine a day when the farmers stop producing for even 3 days for us. हमारा problem सिर्फ ये होता है in every disaster I've seen now. I mean, 91 से disasters देख रहे हैं, and one of the bigger work area of Goonj is also disaster. Then how do you make sure that people get only what they need, and how they get it? That's also very important part. तो आपको यदि dignity को restore करना है, तो restore करना ही नहीं है, आपको respect करना है. Restore गई कहाँ? कहीं नहीं गई. आप ही छीन रहे हो और फिर आप ही कह रहे हो restore करोगे. अरे भाई, as it is respect करो. वो इंसान के बस पास में कभी एक earthquake और flood आया है या कोई murder हुआ है, वो कहीं भी हो सकता है. COVID has actually taught us that you might have house full of money, but you don't know. So disaster, all of us have now seen the disaster, but unfortunately, well, just to sum it up, our attitude and behaviors have still not changed. We have not started respecting our house help or press wala or the Blinkit का supplier, all those people. जबकि हम लोग जिंदा होने की वजह से रहे हैं. और मैं एक बात सबको याद दिला रहा हूँ आजकल कि भाई 10% लोग जो हैं वो डॉक्टर्स की वजह से जिंदा रहे, 100% लोग किसान की वजह से जिंदा रहे. और उसी किसान के यहाँ जब कोई डिजास्टर होता है आप उसको जो मर्जी करना शुरू कर देते हो. That has to change. You just have to respect.
So I think for us, creating love and empathy is the core to what we do, right? So you may start in a very hostile situation, but it goes down to how are you similar to an elephant? How are you different from a tiger? And literally kids start listing, yeah, they have babies, we have babies, they need a house, they need food. It goes down to the very, very basics of what any living creature needs. And we start from that. And then it's very quick. You forget the trauma, you realize that actually they may look different, but most of our needs are very, very, very similar. And the conflict comes because we're trying to fill those needs, right? So the empathy and love comes very, very quickly, and it wasn't hard to design and test and build. What I think we realized along the way was often we dismiss children that you don't know or you're too young or listen to me. And we started to figure out ways to empower these kids. We focus on children between 10 to 13 because a lot of the extreme conflict stuff is you can't really talk to a 5-6-year-old and maybe a 16-year-old is already checked out, doesn't care. So our target audience is a 10 to 13-year-old. And the empowerment has had very dramatic effects where we run several other programs in the very same areas, very same villages. And so we now have a toll-free number that serves 4,000 villages in the Western and Eastern Ghats. You call us saying, I've had my crops destroyed, we come and help you file the compensation claim with the government. A lot of these children are now making their parents call us. It's something really simple. You have a mobile phone or a phone and you call. And the sense of empowerment saying, my mother didn't know, my grandmother didn't know, the village sarpanch didn't know that this number exists. There is money from the government if you lose crops to an elephant. And it starts with creating these empowerment circles, right? And another thing we do is ask them to identify a problem in their house, their village, their school, and how would they solve it? Not an India level problem, not a state level problem. And so what are the ways you build confidence in children to solve and think critically about an issue so that it doesn't go into an extreme, my life is over, I'll never get out of this deep trauma.
I just want to add to what you were sharing. I think something that we do, again, this related to trauma, something that we actively do is we ensure that, the alternate spaces that I was talking about, let's say the flood has come, there's discontinuity. So the first thing that the child loses is the ability to go out, meet other friends, express themselves. So I think for us that alternate space becomes the space where child comes, they have a space to just process their emotions and there is a facilitator there who is helping them navigate their emotions. And we do multiple different activities to ensure that they can do it in a more structured way, in a more processed way. But I think that really helps them to because when they hear their peers also sharing what they are going through and how they are coping up, something does emerge through those circles. So we rely on those structures primarily.
So we'll do a time check. Last question lenge. I'll add what Shiksha does, and we say that ki bringing the context of the child is very important. So हम बोलते हैं कि भारत का नक्शा सिखाने से पहले या छत्तीसगढ़ का नक्शा बताने से पहले अपने गांव का नक्शा बनाओ. That brings in that sense of ownership. Children become extremely happy when they are able to use their language in the classroom, their context. होली और दिवाली पे उनको निबंध लिखने के लिए बोलने की बजाय अगर मैं उनको बोलूं कि फागुन मड़ई या दंतेश्वरी मंदिर पे लिखो, so that these are not just convenient strategies for learning outcomes, but these are also strategies to bring in that respect for their identity and acknowledging that in the classrooms, which unfortunately our classrooms and our school systems have not done that. बल्कि हमारा current education system हमको demean करने की दिशा में ही लेके जा रहा है, ridiculing everything that has been there for centuries. So that's what we do. We'll take one last question. Kriti has to go. She had told me 1:30 pe I have to go. It is already past 1:30. And then we can take it offline. Yeah.
My question is also relating to parenting that she talked about. One idea that goes around is कि कैसे बच्चों को हमें बचाना है trauma से. How do we create those playful spaces where they do not get exposed to traumas? But then there another idea that goes is how do you make them aware? I'm not saying that expose them fully, but aware so that they become those resilient, empathetic beings. पर जैसे आपने भी रेसिडेंशियल स्कूल्स का एग्जांपल दिया that there are parents who think कि बच्चा जाएगा और खुद धोएगा तो grounded बनेगा, he'll develop those skills, she'll develop those skills, and then there are parents who want to save them from all these traumas. How do you find a middle way? Or like, how do you deal with this? That should we save our children and do not give them exposure to any of these, or should we make them capable enough to deal with these traumas? My question is clear, right?
I think we don't. I mean, मैं ये teaching them how to deal with trauma, मुझे लगता है कि बच्चों को नहीं, मतलब एक महिला जो रोज डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस सीख रही फेस कर रही है, मैं उसको रेजिलिएंट बनाऊं या उसके पति को और उसके परिवार को समझाऊं कि भाई तुम लोग सुधर जाओ. सो बच्चा रोज अगर टीचर से मार खा रहा है कॉर्पोरल पनिशमेंट में, तो प्रॉब्लम बच्चे को डील करवाने की नहीं है, प्रॉब्लम तो टीचर को ठीक करने की है, एक सिस्टम को ठीक करने की है कि वो सिस्टम उस बच्चे के साथ कैसे डील कर रहा है. एक IAS ऑफिसर अगर एक स्कूल विजिट करता है और वो अगर उस बच्चे के सामने उसके टीचर को गालियां देता है या उस बच्चे से भी बदतमीजी से बात करता है, तो वो प्रॉब्लम फिर मैं बच्चे को क्या सिखाऊं? At least till 10 years of age, the basic human values and emotions of compassion, empathy, respect, ये बच्चों की ऑलरेडी बहुत स्ट्रांग होती है, हम उनको नहीं सिखा सकते, हमको बड़ों को सिखाना होगा. So at Shiksha we work on socio-emotional well-being, but then we are saying कि ये बच्चों के साथ नहीं करना है, ये बाकी लोगों के साथ क्या कर सकते हैं. How do you interact with children is more important. बच्चों को क्या सिखाएंगे अब?
वो कंपल्शन है so that you move them out of the conflict zones. क्या करोगे, कब तक क्या क्या संभालोगे आप? You had a question, you raised your hand.
Actually, it was more than a question, it was a reflection, because I suddenly realized that what the paradigm or the framework or the frame of references that we use to in some way reimagine this education space is largely focused on, I work in social emotional ethical disposition space, is actually for urban kids often. And I find that the skills that you talk about, empathy, interdependence, resilience, they already exist in a lot of these communities. So in fact, these are actually hubs of excellence in some way. And these are actually stories to amplify, and these are our contexts to learn from. rather than in some way looking at it the other way around, that these are communities that need to be fixed or need to receive learning and writing. In fact, perhaps it's the other way around. And I think that was a big reflection for me, and I just wanted to just share and say thank you.
Thank you. I think it goes back to respect. Again, respect what is there already.
All right, so we'll end this formally now. अभी आप पकड़ सकते हो तो पकड़ लो. लेकिन William, thank you so much, Anshu Bhaiya, Kriti, Rahul, and thank you everyone. I mean, for taking out time for this narrative. अभी ये side event है. I hope that in future it will be part of the main discussion as well. Thank you so much for your time.